Hello. I've got
Hey.
there we go. Do you hear that music in the background? It's still going, I think.
Oh, I didn't hear it. I heard it to start, and I kind of got into it. It was sad. There's only 30 seconds.
It's because my YouTube is playing right now. Hold on a second. Okay, I fixed it. That's so funny. Live streaming, folks. All right, hello. This is the StepZen stream, and I am your host, Anthony Campolo. And today we have Sean Keegan from Postman with us. Thanks for being here, Sean.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anthony. I'm super excited. I love hopping on other folks' streams and seeing what kind of cool stuff you're building and doing. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, and I would love to get just a little bit of your background and how you got into this stuff. I think you and I are both teachers in our previous lives.
Yeah. So I used to be a math teacher, and I'll apologize in advance. Like, I'm in New York City, so there's going to be all sorts of horns and
I live in Oakland, so it happens all the time.
Yeah, cool. So I used to be a math teacher, and that was kind of my first career. I loved it. I loved, getting nerdy about stuff and teaching other people and getting them excited about nerdy things. And math seemed to fit the bill pretty well. But yeah, eventually I just kind of realized I wanted to do something a bit different. So I took a coding boot camp and kind of fell in love with the idea of learning new things all the time and teaching others how to do it. And took that, combination of skill and passion and ended up in the developer relations world.
Yeah, that's so funny. Like, you guys actually port that story almost perfectly for me, like word for word. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's really cool. And how did you find your way to Postman?
So how did I find my way to Postman? I used it a little bit when I was in the boot camp just to, practice exploring APIs, testing API endpoints. So I was vaguely familiar of it. And then I was, I got laid off right when the pandemic started. And so I was just kind of looking around for different developer advocate jobs. And I honestly don't remember how, I learned about the Postman developer advocate role opening, but I'm super glad I did because I've been here just about a year now and it's been awesome. But yeah, it's a great question. I should try to figure out how I ended up here.
Well, I mean, I get it because similar thing when you're in these boot camps, most of the time, most people use Postman when they get into what does it mean to test an API. So I tried a little bit and then got more into Insomnia. And so I've actually learned a bunch about Postman by just researching this stream. It's been really great. And it's a massive company. You guys just did a huge funding round. So congrats on that. Very cool. It's nice to just the whole API ecosystem kind of growing, continuing to be a big thing. And how big is the DevRel team?
So our DevRel team, we just hired our 7th person directly on our team. So we've got 7 folks. I think there's 3 developer advocates, our head of the team, and we have a technical community manager. And I don't remember exactly what our newest hire's title is, but he kind of is like a program manager for the team, I believe. So yeah, if you're watching, I will look up your title as soon as this is over. But
these titles are so amorphous because we've talked about this with other people. You have developer advocates, and then you have this new term, developer experience engineer, which is, as far as I can tell, they're the same role. It's just a different title for it. But I find that usually it's more technical or more content or more community, but you can't get away from any of them. You have to be have a little bit of your foot in all of them at the same time. It's just kind of you emphasize one more than the other, maybe, or you have a niche in one more than the other. But yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And then there's developer evangelist, technical evangelist. So there's all sorts
of. Well, the developer evangelist is also developer advocate that they just rebranded again. I think it's this is a term invented by Apple back in the 80s or 90s, but it's long history of the term. But I'd actually like to get into what is Postman, just say for someone who may have never used it. How would you describe it?
Sure. So Postman is an API collaboration platform. And so what that really means is, well, I'll back up and talk about maybe how Postman started. So really it started as an API client just to kind of, like I said, test API endpoints, make some API calls and see the response and just kind of make that process a little bit easier for people. It has since evolved into a much more robust product. And it really is, it helps with all parts of the API lifecycle. So whether you're developing an API, whether you're testing an API, it allows you to do all of those things and collaborate throughout the whole process. So, if I'm at company X and I have an API, I can build it, I can mock test it, build monitors, all within Postman to check the health of it. And I can have that publicly available, so folks, like yourself or anybody else can come and check out the API and test it using Postman. So really, it allows you to do all things API, like all parts of the API lifecycle.
Awesome. And that's great for us here at StepZen because we are a company for building APIs. So it's a very good tool to have in your tool belt, because if you're going to be spending your whole day building APIs, you want to make sure the tooling that you're going to use to verify that it works and to figure out what it's even doing in the first place is very important. And so it's I find that there's so many other things kind of like this also appearing. I constantly hear like these new API client things, and seems like Postman just has like the largest set of features because you have like also all this collaboration stuff, and there's just like a huge wide variety of things.
Yeah, for sure. There's tons of tools for any job, and I wouldn't speak poorly of any of the other tools out there. They all serve a purpose. I think where Postman really shines is that ability to collaborate on things. We have public workspaces, which we'll get into a little bit at some point in this stream, which really is about collaboration and allowing folks to take the information that you put out there and have it consumed by the public pretty easily.
But can I just copy and paste a curl command? Isn't that just as good?
You could. But good luck when things go awry and you have a million parameters and authorization.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, cool. Let's get into the project here. So I'm going to start off by creating a StepZen project, and it's going to have a couple endpoints and schemas for anyone who's watching who maybe doesn't know anything about StepZen. This is a GraphQL tool that allows you to stitch together many different types of backend data sources, whether that's REST APIs or GraphQL APIs or even databases. And in this example, we're going to have a REST API and a GraphQL API, and then just kind of like some mock test data as well. And I've got a couple of commands here to just kind of set up the project for us. We have an index.graphql, which is going to stitch just all of our other files together. So we got a test. This is the Rick and Morty GraphQL, and then Pokemon REST. So hopefully two fairly well-known APIs. Do you have any favorite APIs that you like to test with?
I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Star Wars API, just because it was one of the first ones that I explored. When I was getting started in the boot camp, Swappy, I think as it's lovingly called.
Well, that's great. That's actually the example in the canonical GraphQL docs. They walk you through like how GraphQL works with like creating basically a Star Wars API with GraphQL.
Yeah,
they're all just like characters and shows, because then you can also relate like what episodes or movies they're in, and then like characteristics about them, and so you get up like a huge data graph really quickly. So the only other things we've done here is we've created .getignore, which we don't really have to worry about these for this project, and then this which is going to set our API endpoint once we actually deploy this. And this is going to be our first schema here. It's just a test query. And so what this does, there's no directives or anything, and StepZen knows to return mock JSON when you send it a query like this. So we have a test that's going to have string, int, and float, and then we have a query that's going to be get test, and it's going to return this test thingamajig here. And then StepZen start is how we actually deploy the API. So this takes our project, bundles it, deploys it, and then gives us a graphical editor to query it with. And then this is going to be one way that we can test our StepZen endpoint, but then with Postman, we can test it in a slightly different way with way more stuff. So right now we're just running this mock JSON query, which is going to do a get test query and return float, int, and string. And then we see the float here, decimals, int, whole number, and then string. So I remember we talked a little bit about this before you came on, that you're not like, you know what GraphQL is, and you've worked with it a little bit, you're going to consider yourself like a GraphQL expert, which is totally fine. Because like that's what we're here for. But I'd be curious, like, is this all pretty comprehensible to you in terms of like what is happening here?
Yeah, I'm glad you said it, because I was about to, give a quick, update for those watching. Not a huge GraphQL savant yet. It is something I'm actively learning and enjoying learning. But so far I think all this, makes complete sense to me. I'm excited to make it a little bit more complex. That's the limits for me.
And then the thing that this is doing for you that's pretty nice is that it's handling the authentication for you, because the StepZen CLI is able to configure your API keys automatically. So the first thing I want to do, and this is kind of why I was making that joke about the curl command, is we're going to look at this is going to be a way that we can send this exact same query just through a curl command. So we have the request, which is going to be a post, and you're posting to this endpoint, which is here. And then we're going to set the header, which I'll do off screen. And then you tell it the content type. This is basically just like throwing JSON back and forth. And then this is the actual query itself. You see we tell it first it's a query, and then we can put the actual query itself in here. And this is the type of stuff that was really nice to not have to worry about, like figure out where do you put the quotes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to hop off screen for a second.
This is where you'll do the headers.
Yeah, so StepZen gives you an API key, and then it's like authorization, and then you prefix it with API key, one word, all lowercase, and then your actual key right in front of it.
Gotcha.
Cool. And this is something you get once you sign up for StepZen, because it's hosting this API for you. So you sign up, you get an account, and then you get an account name. So we're gonna have like our own domain also, which is really cool. And then you get the API key.
That is nice. And Anthony, while you're doing this, I saw a few folks in the chat. I saw we have a former teacher in the chat. So there's awesome. Quite a few of us in this stream already.
Yeah, I find that the quote unquote traditional background of like computer science majors is becoming less and less of like the traditional backgrounds, more so like humanities majors who went to boot camps.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, that's all good. Okay, let me check the whole thing. All right. Now I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, so what happened here is I'm hiding the actual curl request up top, but once we ran it, it hit us back with this data object here, which is the exact same output we saw over here. So we can test it just with regular old curl, but this is where Postman comes into play. So Postman, you have many different ways to use it. You can do it on the browser or through your like a desktop app. So how do you prefer to use it?
I've gotten really comfortable and really familiar with using it, just Postman for the web. The main reason being it's just significantly easier, maybe not easier, but it's very easy to just share things. You can, every collection, every request, every workspace will each have its own specific URL. Right? So if you wanted to say like, hey, Sean, check out this, exact request, you can send me a link to that. I can go directly to it and it'll open up that request in my browser, and it's just super easy.
Nice. And so we're doing a shared workspace. So you want to talk a little bit about what that is?
Sure. Yeah. So a workspace is going to be just kind of like the general container for where you house, your collections, APIs, environments, all things that are kind of related to, whatever really you want. And so for this one, Anthony created a team workspace, and this is this, Cloudy Flare. I believe that's your. Okay, so this is our team, right? So Anthony and I, you can see we're part of this team. And we've got 3 workspaces, and we're going into this team workspace here. And this is where that kind of like collaboration piece comes into play. So
yeah, so we've got the one that I already kind of made, but we're going to walk through all these kind of individually. So I want to just kind of start from actually making just a collection. So yeah, a lot of different stuff. And I find that you usually start with a collection and then add requests, or do people start another way and then kind of go to the collection after?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty common workflow, right? Starting with like creating a collection and then, building in your individual requests as part of it.
And then we're going to create an HTTP request. And this is where we want to actually tell it that we're going to be doing GraphQL. And you start by doing a post, because all GraphQL queries are posts. And then in the body, you are able to tell it specifically that we want to do in GraphQL. So this is where the Postman team has built-in GraphQL capabilities specifically as its like own thing separate from everything else, because it's its own language with its own spec and all of that. But it's a pretty basic in terms of you have queries and you have these GraphQL query variables, which you also had in our StepZen API here. So it's closed off, but we have query variables down here, which is the same deal. We'll get into query variables in a second. But I am then going to set the headers. So I'm going to hop off screen one more time to do my API key there.
For sure. And yeah, Lucia, I agree, right? This is, certainly a easier way, I think, to, consume and test an API than copying and pasting curl commands. And yeah, like there's nothing wrong with curl. Certainly a valid way to test APIs and send requests and get responses. I think it becomes a little bit easier using an API client like Postman to see it. You also
the one thing I do like about curl is that it contains the whole thing in like one thing that someone else can run from their terminal. So I find that is one nice aspect of it, but it's just like you have to really understand what curl is and all the headers and actually format it correctly and stuff like that, so it doesn't look ridiculous to look at.
Yeah, right. Just like a 600 character long string of something you have no idea what you're looking at.
Because it actually does make sense once you kind of look at like the headers or the flags and then how you set the stuff. So you can make it so they have like specific lines for each thing it's doing. But I just find most people don't actually do that.
Yeah, just like copy and paste, it works. I'm not going to bother formatting this thing.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get back on here. One more thing, actually. Yes, not going to do that. Nope. All right.
And I can very much appreciate the, carefulness you're exhibiting here. Like I have leaked way too many things on stream, so I love the diligence of making sure we don't leak anything.
Yeah, my first stream was a total disaster in that regard, but it's a good lesson, that's for sure. Okay, yeah. I set the header here, and then now we're going to actually run the query here. So we also have to give it our endpoint as well. So this is the endpoint deploys. This is something that confuses people a lot. This confused me when I first was using StepZen, that we're running on localhost 5000 here, but that's this graphical editor thing we're seeing to send queries. Our actual endpoint is a thing that's already deployed and on the internet that anyone can hit. Wow. And so this is your account name. My account name is Pleasanton, because that's where I grew up, Pleasanton, California. And then the name we gave it was API/StepZen Postman, which is in the stepzen.config.json. So we grab that.
So this is a live, live server now. We can ping this, which I imagine is what we'll show next. But that's
about to happen. Cool. And boom, so there's the stuff. Woo! So this is the whole shebang in that respect. And this is cool because we're getting things like now we can see more data like this. So I find like the visibility it gives you into like how fast your API is responding and stuff like that is great. Now, what's really cool about GraphQL explorers like this is that you can do this whole thing where you can like write queries by like clicking stuff. So that's pretty cool. But in terms of like getting more just like hard metrics and stuff like that, it's a little bit opaque in terms of that kind of stuff. And you're better off just kind of like just doing like curls and getting data that way. But I find that having just like, and this is what's gonna be cool, is we're gonna be able to compare like the amount of bytes that come back for different responses when we do a REST one. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, Anthony, I feel like it might lose some of the like allure to you because you've done it so much and for so long now. But I just think that the speed and convenience of which you just deployed an API that we're able to query is like, I feel like pretty understated, that we're already like, we just created it in a few clicks in StepZen and now we're doing it. Like, I think so far this is awesome.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And it took me a while to like really wrap my mind around what StepZen was and like what it was capable of. But once you kind of get the workflow and how a project is structured, it's really nice. Like the amount of code we're going to have to write to do this is just so small, and it's fairly comprehensible, I think, for people who are even beginner programmers, because you can like look at the type, you can look at what it has on it, and then you can look at the query, and understanding what the query is doing is the kind of the challenging part. But once you've kind of written enough of them, it just eventually clicks into place, and you're like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Did I not save this yet? So there we go. Okay, so this one was the mock JSON. So all right, so now I actually have it saved, ready to go. And then what I'll do is, since I already have all the keys and everything set up, I'll just duplicate it for the next one. And then we'll get rid of the body. And then now we're going to have the Rick and Morty API. So let's actually first, before we do that, let's so now what I want to do is I want to just hit the Rick and Morty by itself. And most GraphQL APIs you see will have this /GraphQL at the end. It doesn't necessarily have to, it's just a common convention. And we're going to now send a similar query, except this time it's going to have a query variable. And what that means is that we're asking for a specific character, and we're asking for the character with the ID of 1. And so that is going to be the first character in Rick and Morty, which of course is Rick Sanchez. Whoops.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So we get back the ID, the name, and then this image here of Rick. And
so Anthony, one fun thing. So I noticed you clicked it and it opened up a new request.
Yeah.
So if you were to actually go ahead and send that request, we should get in the response body, we'll get the same picture. It's kind of fun.
That is very cool. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Nice. That's funny. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm still getting used to, is that it has its own tabs within it. So like, I'm in a browser with tabs, and then I'm in another thing with tabs. I'm just like, oh no.
Do you do the Command W sometimes to try to close a Postman tab, and then you close the actual tab?
That's exactly what just happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it too well.
Okay. All right. Anyway, so let's do that. So now we're going to, now that I showed that the endpoint, what I'm going to show here is this is how we now get into our StepZen project. And so we're defining our character type again. So ID, name, and image. That's the data we got back with our query. And we have these custom StepZen directives that let you feed in different endpoints. So this one's GraphQL. The next one's going to be REST. And with GraphQL, you just have the endpoint and you send in the queries. And since this is public, unprotected API, you don't have to worry about any key management or anything like that. But that's all we got to do there. And then we can do this query again over in our StepZen editor here. Now we're getting it back. And the only thing that we want to change here now is that we want to not hard code the ID here. We want to send it in as a query variable. And the way we do that is we just slightly change the query we're going to send. And so this is now going to have this $ID, and then that gets passed through here. And then we send this query variable like so with ID 1, and that's going to return the exact same thing.
Sweet.
So let's get this set up now for our over here. We're going to do that, and then we're going to do this over here, and that's, oops. Yep, and then that's already good to go. And then if we want to get a different character, we can get Morty.
Yeah, I mean, here we're seeing like the benefit of variables, right? Like instead of having it hard coded, we can change it. The request stays the same. You know, we're just changing the ID.
All right. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. So we can test a regular old REST endpoint, which I think is probably how most people use Postman for the most part. And you just do a get on the thing, and then you get the thing. That's pretty nice. But if we look at the difference here, we're getting 2.63 kilobytes back versus the GraphQL ones were much smaller, like 352 bytes. And that's because you're asking specifically for the subset of the data you want instead of just getting all of it back in one go. This is one thing that I got to remember to do is save it after I do it. So this is get. There we go. Cool. Yeah. Any questions on that so far?
No, I mean my first instincts here are, well, hold on, Anthony, you're working with GraphQL API and a REST API. Are we going to be able to do this?
Mm-hmm. So this is where StepZen becomes really useful. And this is something you're not going to get out of the box with GraphQL if you're just picking open source kind of libraries and frameworks, is that these are directives that were written specifically by StepZen. So these are StepZen specific. Everything else is just how GraphQL looks. But the difference here is now we have this endpoint, which is going to have that REST endpoint, but we can tell it that we don't want to get everything. We just want a specific field. And so if we look at the response here, really what we want is this results here. So we're going to tell StepZen to only return the results by setting this result root. And then we feed the endpoint. You can also do keys and query variables and stuff like that. But this is going to have us all good to go here. So, all right, and there's our Pokemon. So now we're just getting the Pokemon and the name. And that's the only thing we're getting back versus here where we're getting just the whole thing back at once. So
is it fair to kind of say, in a way, we're treating this REST API and almost transforming it to act like a GraphQL API, and that we're specifying what we want?
Yep. So the way I like to say it is GraphQL all the things. You can take anything you want and feed it into a GraphQL interface that you can query with GraphQL queries, and then also combine it all into one endpoint as well, because this is the thing that you have lots of different things and solutions aimed at, things like Apollo Federation and OneGraph, and there's lots of different takes on like how to do this. So there's other ways to do this, but for the most part, it's usually kind of like a higher order thing from when you're just learning GraphQL by itself. Usually you're just learning kind of all this stuff. And then once you get in the question of, okay, well then how do we like actually stitch all the non-GraphQL stuff together, becomes a whole more interesting kind of questions where like GraphQL mesh is like kind of the closest open source equivalent, but then you have to like run that yourself and figure out how to deploy that endpoint. You should have a server, which is, doing all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Great. So then we can do the same query now through our Postman interface. So this is now, one more thing that I wanted to show is the the benefit now of then having all these together is we can do a query with all the things. I call this all things query.
I feel like this is an appropriate name given what we're about to do.
And then all those different queries we did, we're now abstracting them out. So we had Pokemon name, we had character with ID 1, and then we had get test with our test stuff.
So you're going to click send here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but we took what was 3 different disparate APIs of different protocols, and we made one single request, harnessing the power of what StepZen just did, and we got a response back that includes information from all of these APIs.
Yep. So we have the character, Rick and Morty character, the test data, and then our Pokemon down here. So yeah, so that's kind of like a StepZen kind of 101 in terms of like how you can just pull in like the simplest possible version of each of those and then put them together. But if you think about it then now, if you have like a Shopify store, like that's gonna be a REST API, but there's all these now GraphQL content or CMSs like Graph CMS and things like Sanity and all these things, they have GraphQL interfaces. So if you can leverage both of these worlds at the same time and like work with them in a unified, coherent way, then that's where all this velocity then comes in, where it's like, oh, you just did it. And there it is,
Yeah, this is super cool. I remember when, Anthony, you and I first started chatting, and I was trying to wrap my head around, like what exactly StepZen did and, what is kind of the benefit and value. But yeah, this is so cool to me. And you kind of hinted at, like a business case. I'm just thinking from like a fun way to think about it, right? Rather than having to like loop through all these requests and, make 10 different requests, the ability to just do it all in one is pretty sweet to me.
Yeah, it's really fun to work with. And the main thing is going to be just how long it takes you to get spun up with like the GraphQL terminology and the kind of concepts. And I was lucky in that I had been doing Redwood, this like GraphQL framework for like going on close to a year when I started working at StepZen. So I was able to just focus on like what's the StepZen stuff because I already got GraphQL. But you have to learn both GraphQL and what StepZen is doing at the same time. It gets kind of more confusing, and kind of separating those two out from each other is useful. We kind of try to do in our docs. You have like a GraphQL section that's like, this is what GraphQL is. And then we have the rest of the docs, which is like all of our stuff,
Yeah, makes sense.
All right. And now there's one more cool thing that if you use Insomnia, you are going to be like, I definitely want this. You can create a schema that then will give you things like auto completion. And so I had, let me make a new one. So we're going to make an API, and we're going to call it StepZen API, give it a version, and then the schema type, you select GraphQL, and it's GraphQL schema format. And we have our schema here, and it's mostly going to be the same thing we had in our StepZen files. And there we go. And then you go to definition. There we go. So we have our Pokemon type, character type, test type, and then our queries, our 3 queries. So this is without any of the StepZen directives or anything like that. This is just like the GraphQL part. So I talk about like taking StepZen out. You basically take out the directives, then you get this. So we save that, and then now we can go back to these ones over here, and we're going to refresh. We're going to set our schema. And what's cool now is if we do this, we can hit Control Space, and we can see what we can do. We can set a Pokemon query, get test query, or a character query. And then once we do that, we can see, all right, I can do sometimes it gets test. So yeah, there we go. So you can also get autocomplete like so. Cool. All right, so that's kind of the main like how to work with the API type stuff, and then you wanted to show some stuff around like collaboration, how you could like leave notes on this because we're both in this shared workspace together.
Yeah, I think the stuff you've shown is like a really cool like high level overview of some of the stuff in Postman. Right. So like you create this API, the StepZen API, and we're able to like hit it and get some valuable information back from it. Yeah, like the collaboration part is pretty cool. And I'm happy to share my screen for a second here. And I'll kind of go through the process of saying like, Anthony, this is really cool. What if we did, X, Y, or Z, and kind of just show how that can happen as well. Perfect. So I am pulling up my screen. Are you seeing the StepZen Postman test?
Yep. You're all good.
All right.
Which we should use the other one. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So let's say we're in this Get Pokemon API, and this is.
And could you bump up your font just a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's say that in our all the things query, or here I'll do it in the Pokemon query, where we look at the body tab, and we've taken out the name, or we've taken out what was it, the URL, I think.
That was for Rick and Morty, or maybe Pokemon too. There's both of them had much larger schemas that we're not accessing right now. Yeah.
So either way, like whatever it was, if I wanted to say, I actually think it's valuable to have this information in here. I can go from right now. This pencil means I'm in like editing mode. I'm going to I can change this to say instead of name, I don't know, like whatever I wanted to change. But if I want to leave a comment, I come up here and switch to comment mode. And I actually have the ability to leave a comment in quite a few different places. I can leave it directly in line here, which is what I'll try to do. But the UI gets a little clunky.
And is the comment just plain text? Can you do like bold and italics, or it's just plain text?
Yeah, so you can. So it's Markdown supported. So if I wanted to tag a teammate, I could say like, it is really important to have the Pokemon's ID, right? And so I can add this. So now we see like we have the Markdown, right? If I wanted to include other stuff in here, I certainly could. But what's nice is like I'm showing my screen, but you should get notified on your screen and have different stuff come up, and it's really nice, for this sort of collaboration. I'm trying to. Some stuff is a little bit funky, but if I can show comments here, we'll do this. But yeah, I just think it's like a kind of a fun way to work together and do things within Postman. So I'm gonna stop sharing, and Anthony, if you want to show yours again and like what it looks like now that I've sent that, I think it's just like a valuable way to work together on APIs and not have it be such a isolated solo journey.
Yeah, definitely. Let me just make sure I got it. Yeah, cool. All right. Okay, so I will now share my screen. And I think you're still sharing, even though I'm not showing it. Just so you know. Okay.
Yeah, gotcha. Stop screen.
Cool. So you see mine?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So here we can always see something's different. You're like, oh, there's a message. I have a notification. That means I must check it.
Exactly.
And then there's the message, and that's me over there. And yeah. So and then comment is, and then I can say I agree. And cool. And now we got a whole conversation going.
Yep. Yeah. And on my screen, I just got a notification that says like when to comment. And yeah, it's this is a very trivial example of how we communicate in here, but keeping everything kind of contained to the workspace can be quite valuable, right? Just rather than having a Slack message and a in-person conversation and GitHub comments, like whatever, it just becomes a little bit easier to keep all things together, which I think is valuable.
Sweet. Awesome. So is there anything else you wanted to show in terms of the collaboration aspect?
Well, I think, one thing that, for folks following along, if they wanted to, make requests to this API, we could certainly make this available. So I think, if we were to maybe remove some of the current authorization, one of the really nice things that Postman has is, right now we're in a team workspace, which means it's private, to yourself and me. But if we said, this stuff's actually pretty useful and cool, and I think, folks outside of our organization might want to be able to use this API, we can go ahead and do that pretty easily. And so I think, this is where, Anthony, you might want to remove, strip out some of those tokens and headers and stuff. But yeah, so while Anthony's doing that, I'll just kind of elaborate a bit more. So once the workspace goes from team to public, everything that's in there, other people can what we call fork it, which just means like pull in a local copy, so that you can go through and make the request yourself, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm just going through these queries and just deleting the key, because I'm just kind of brute forcing it right now. But really what you'd want to do is you'd want to keep the authorization header in there, and you'd want to have some sort of like variable that is for where the API key would go. And you said there's like environments, so.
Yeah. Have you messed around with environments at all?
I have not, no.
Okay. So yeah, environments are basically, groups of variables that can be reused throughout, different requests. Right. And so instead of, entering your API key in 10 different spots, if it's the same thing, we can update our API key in one spot, and then say changes, right? We just change the variable in the environment, and then everything else, all the places it's reused, will be repopulated.
Nice. Okay, so first, before that, let's just,
Yes.
How do we make this public?
Cool. So if you look on the top left where it says StepZen Postman Test, like the name of the workspace itself, click that, and this will pull up the workspace overview. And then on that right pane where it says sharing, this is where we can kind of control, who gets to see it and how public things are. And so, yeah, you want to delete that one?
Yeah. All right, cool. So it's for the team. So you can do personal, team, private, or public.
Yeah. And so, once you click that, I don't know if you saw, but real quick, this modal popped up on the bottom that says everyone can see it.
That's funny.
And so, like if I were, somebody not part of this team, really anybody watching can find it now. If they were to search, in the search bar at the top in the middle.
Sorry, I wanted to look at a couple other things first.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so the key is still in there. No.
Oh,
Interesting. Okay.
You can also.
I probably didn't save when I changed them all.
Okay. You could also, Anthony, make it not public for now. I think just the process of showing what it looked like is cool. And then, maybe after the stream, we can go through and remove some of the, sensitive info. And
I'll probably end up rolling this key is what we'll have to do.
Yeah. Sorry, I tried.
All good. Part of the process.
Yeah. We got so close too.
I mean, this is when this thing goes well, it's hard to when you're like a newbie learning this stuff, it's hard to know actually how consequential this stuff is until you actually mess it up. So hope you all enjoy the learning opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to go back here and there and change this to team again. Boom. All right, cool. I think that pretty much covers most of the stuff we wanted to cover though. And is there anything else you kind of want to close out with in terms of things people should know, where they should go, where it's good resources, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So we do every week we have a stream of our own, when we talk about different things, Postman. So very similar to what we did today. We'll have folks come onto our stream. So that's every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We also have a new series of webinars called Space Camp, and that's every 2 weeks. And those are structured towards specific types of users. So right now we're in the middle of our documentation mini series. And so next Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for adding that to the chat.
And what was the first one you said before Space Camp?
Just our weekly stream. It'd be harder to find like an exact.
Your Twitch channel.
Yeah, our Twitch channel is a great place.
Get Postman.
You kind of see. Yep, exactly.
It can't be get and post.
Well, with StepZen, you can have everything in there.
And yeah, continue.
Yeah, no. So that's a bit. If you're looking to check out some Postman streams where we do similar stuff and have guests and talk about fun, integrations and cool things to do, come on by.
And then you have a Twitter as well, don't you?
For myself or for Postman?
For yourself, yeah.
I do. My name for everything is going to be Sean Ryan Keegan. So you can find me on Twitter, GitHub.
Ultimate Frisbee, video games, and house plants. That is so funny.
Yeah, those are my passions. So.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Sean. This was a ton of fun. Like, very, very educational for me. I definitely have a much better sense of like why I would actually use Postman over any of these other kind of tools. So I'm super excited about just the functionality it has around like organizing and saving queries specifically, because this is a thing when you're testing these endpoints, you have all these GraphQL queries, and like right now it's just like there's markdown files where we explain them all, and it's just like a list of them, and so this is a much better way of organizing this, and having it as like a resource along with some of our sample projects is going to be like really, really sweet. Oh, and Claire's in the chat too. Oh, good. I need to shout out Claire, who's the one who set this up. Claire Freilich from the Redwood team. She put us in touch. So thank you, Claire.
Hi, Claire. Cool.
All right. And then for anyone who wants to check out StepZen, we got StepZen.com. And then we have StepZen samples on GitHub. We got some Hacktoberfest stuff going on right now. We're in the process of migrating a Nuxt app to Nuxt 3, which is super fun. And then we also have a SpaceX GraphQL API project. So yeah, check us out there. And then my Twitter is AJCWebDev. All right, cool. Thanks so much, Sean. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do something like this again sometime.
For sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Bye, everyone.
Bye all.